Welcome. I'm excited to be with you. This is the first time I've ever talked to math professors, except, in the lunchroom. And the topic of my talk today will be how can we use positive psychology to motivate our students in the math classroom? Um, which implies that I'm a psychologist and not a math professor. My name is Rhett Diesner, and I teach psychology courses at Lewis Clark State College in Lewiston, Idaho, USA. And although I am a psychologist, I do love mathematics. I use math frequently because I do a fair amount of research, so I'm always crunching data and using a lot of different kinds of statistics. And I sure loved math all through high school. I think I scored over 2 standard deviations above the mean on quantitative thinking on the SAT. So I just want to say, I'm with you, math professors. I love your work. It seems that people and primates in general are better as visual learners than auditory learners. So I've put together a very simple PowerPoint because I like not just for you to hear my voice, but to see some of my ideas. So let's see if I can share screen and pop up my little PowerPoint. And there again, we have our title, How Do I Use Positive Psychology to Motivate My Students? And we have a little outline. This is our agenda today. I'm going to talk a little bit about positive emotions in the college classroom. Then I will talk about a classic positive psychology intervention, which uses the VIA questionnaire, which is the values and action questionnaire that examines 24 beautiful traits of human beings. And the test will let your students know what their top 5 strengths are. Very positive test, nothing negative about it. Then I'll address using music to create positive emotions in the classroom. And then we'll look at 2 more classic positive psychology interventions. One's called What Went Well, and the other is the gratitude letter. And we'll end by talking about greeting students. Just for a little background, the positive psychology movement began in the late 1990s with the recognition that there were 1,300% more papers published on negative emotions than positive emotions in peer-reviewed psychology journals. Positive psychology set out to try to balance that trend and focus research on the positive emotions. It is a very empirically oriented movement. The founders, Seligman and Peterson, are psychological scientists, highly valuing research evidence, as does one of the major players in the positive psychology movement, Barbara Fredrickson. A typical definition of this field is the scientific study of what goes right in life and what makes life most worth living. Positive psychology has 3 central foci, which they call the 3 pillars, one of which is positive emotions. Emotions like happiness, gratitude, awe, elevation, serenity, interest, hope. And then positive traits and character strengths are another one of their pillars. They're basically the human virtues, things like wisdom, love, justice, temperance. That one sounds boring. Courage and transcendence, my favorite. They also do research on positive institutions and how we can make our institutions themselves more positive. Institutions like schools and businesses, etc. We'll be focusing on positive emotions today, and here are some of the reasons why. Emotions drive cognitions. Emotions cause students to pay attention in class, pay attention to their homework, pay attention to reading their textbook. Positive emotions cause short-term memory to be encoded into long-term memory more effectively. Positive emotions cause memories from long-term memory to be recalled more effectively. Excuse me. This, of course, is very important on exams. And positive emotions cause students to study and to complete assignments. Our first intervention we'll talk about is one that has been studied many, many times in the last 20 years in positive psychology. And there's at least 10 peer-reviewed journal articles that have studied different groups of participants on the effectiveness of using signature strengths in new ways. Now, a person's signature strengths are their virtues and character strengths. Now, the way for your students to find out what their top signature strengths are is to invite them to complete the values in action scale. Then you might want to give them a few points to do so. You can just tell the students or send them an email with the link, but if you Google values in action survey, it will be your first hit. It's a very popular site. Literally millions of people across the world have taken this psychology test. You can tell the students it's going to take them about 20 minutes to complete it. Then in class, before they take it, give them a 4x6-inch card, ask them to write their name on it, and when they finish taking the VIA test, to list their top 5 strengths, which are also called the signature strengths, on one half of their card. That way, when they fold it like a tent, it will stand up on their desk and show people their name and their top 5 strengths. Invite them to bring it to class. Now, for example, I do this with my students and I make my own card and I bring it to class with my name on it. And typically, I've taken the test many times, but typically my top 5 look like curiosity, a sense of justice, a love for humanity, a sense of spirituality and purpose, and appreciation of beauty. But because there's 24 different strengths that get analyzed in the test, everybody has a quasi-unique constellation of strengths. So after students have finished the test and you've told them what day it's due, quasi-randomly divide your students into groups of 4 so they're facing each other. Invite them to place their tented cards in front of them, but also tell them, hey, if you forgot your card or you didn't take the scale, don't be embarrassed, just fake it and take a guess at what some of your strengths are, and then take it later for partial credit. Ask them to tell each other their names and give each other fist bumps. Then ask them to pick 2 of their strengths that they identify with most strongly and tell the members of their group which 2 those are. So for instance, on my constellation, I'm a very curious person and I'm constantly noticing the beauty around me. So those are 2 I strongly identify with. So I'd mention those 2 to my group. Then after each student in the group of 4 has mentioned what they think 2 of their strengths are they identify with, then ask everybody in the room to meditate for about a minute about how they could use those 2 strengths in new ways in your math course. Then, after they've done their little reflection and contemplation, ask them to share their ideas with their other small group members. Then, encourage the group members to give suggestions to the other members of their own group about how they could use those 2 top strengths. So for instance, if I was in the group and I mentioned curiosity and how I could use my curiosity in a new way to enhance my math course experience, then later someone else in my group could say, hey, you know what? You could also use curiosity in this way, or you could use appreciation of beauty in this way when it comes to math. By the way, if you put math professors inside an MRI machine and do fMRI, functional magnetic resonant imaging, and have them pre-identify math equations that they find beautiful, the same part of the frontal cortex lights up as when you ask an artist to identify a painting that they like, or a musician to identify a beautiful piece of music. So math really is beautiful. Now, this activity I'm describing doesn't need to be a one-off. You can have them repeat this group activity again in 1 or 2 weeks which will probably work even better because at that point, they'll have thought about their strengths for a while and got some new ideas. Now, in my classes, I have my students bring those tended cards to class every day and put them on their desk. And I break my students up into small active learning groups almost every class. And I ask them when they get into their groups to point the card toward the other members. This shows their name and their top strengths, again, all positive, and it helps students learn who their classmates are, which increase their sense of belongingness, which research shows increases their achievement motivation. Woohoo! Music in the classroom. Music is highly motivating to most students and has the potential to create lots of positive emotions. I got a couple different ways you can use music in the classroom. One would be for you, the professor, to select a piece of music that relates to the goals and objectives of your course, and then play that same piece every day as students are entering class. This then becomes the class song, and it's kind of a sense of priming. Okay, we're in this class now, and it's not totally boring because we got music. And for example, in my developmental psychology class, I play Smetana's The Moldau. It's a symphonic poem about a river, and the river is an excellent metaphor for human development. And I even explain the metaphorical aspects of the song to the students. I also like to play Steppenwolf's Born to Be Wild frequently. In fact, I use it as a prime to pick up quizzes. So when the students finish their quizzes, I play Born to Be Wild, and they know it's time to hand them in. And in my case, Born to Be Wild helps me explain the difference between nature and nurture, genetic causes of development versus environmental, because Born to Be Wild is genetic. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, math songs? Who are you kidding, Deaster? Well, I simply Googled famous songs about mathematics and got tons of hits. For example, the first few were the song Pi by Kate Bush and Brad Paisley's You Do the Math, or the Mandelbrot Set by Colton. Another option is also to invite students to select music. Invite them to play a math song. Tell them, okay, think about the songs that you like and find one that has something to do with math. You might give them 10 bonus points for doing this, especially because I like to ask them to write a proposal. And on their proposal, I want the name of the song and the performer and the length of the song, because if it's too long, I'll ask them to find a place to cut it off. And then in a short paragraph in their proposal, tell me how the song relates to math. And then ask them to include the link, which is usually a YouTube link, in the proposal, or email it to you so it's easy for you to click in class. Then you select the day and time to play the song, and the student reads their proposal to class, and then the song is played. Not every student's going to get into this. They might be a little embarrassed or shy about it, but the students that do, they love it. And it motivates the rest of the students and helps keep class interesting. Another classic positive psychology intervention is called What Went Well. I have used it many, many times in my classes. And my personal experience is it's a good experience that creates positive emotions. One option of how to use WWW, What Went Well, is near the end of class, ask the students to jot down 1 or 2 sentences about something that went well for them in today's class. Then break them into groups of 4 to share with each other the thing that went well for them, or one of the things. Maybe there was a lot. Another option you can also do is at the beginning of class, ask the students to jot down 1 or 2 sentences about what went well while doing their math homework or studying for your class. Again, break them into groups to share what was their at least one positive experience of doing that. You can also kind of mix it up. It doesn't always have to be about math, even in a math class. So for instance, at the beginning of a class, you could ask them to jot down anything that went well for them in the last week, break them into groups to share. This will increase their positive emotions and cause them to pay better attention during the rest of the class session. Also, by the way, which you probably know, is that frequently breaking up into groups helps students get to know their classmates, which creates a greater sense of belonging in the classroom. And a sense of belonging has been well established to increase students' achievement motivation. One of my favorite interventions, because I get a few students that really have a great experience with this, is the gratitude letter. Now, adapting it to a math class, I would invite you to ask your students to think of anyone in their life that has been helpful to them in their math education. Maybe it was their third grade teacher. Maybe it was their ninth grade algebra teacher. Maybe it's an older sister that helped them with their math homework, or a parent. Or maybe they're going to the math tutoring center on campus now, and one of the tutors has been very helpful to them. Invite them to write a letter of gratitude to that person, telling them how much they appreciate their help, and then have them bring that gratitude letter to your next class. Maybe you want to give them 5 points for doing so. Then break them into small groups and invite them to read their letters to each other. Now, the strongest part of this intervention is if the student can actually read their gratitude letter to the person they're grateful to. So you might offer them another 5 bonus points to actually contact the person they wrote the letter to and read that letter aloud to the person. Ideally, this would be done face to face, but it can be done on the phone or in a Zoom meeting if they're far away. Research shows that this will cause a big surge in positive emotions that can last over a week. Now, you probably do this already, but I'm supposed to talk for 15 to 20 minutes, so I thought I'd put in a little filler. Just kidding. So, greeting your students by name. Research shows that when a professor knows their students' names, the students feel the professor cares. And feeling cared for creates positive emotions. So I make it a rule to always arrive to my classroom early, preferably trying to get there before the students. As the students walk into my class, I warmly greet each one by name. If a student had already gotten there before me, I greet them by name as I walk into class. And I am often rewarded by a smile, which of course sets the tone for the rest of the class session by starting with some positive emotions. So coming to the end of my little presentation, and I have a closing thought, which is, remember, emotions drive cognitions. If we can develop a positive emotional tone in the classroom, our students' thinking will improve. All right, it's been nice hanging out with you, and I hope that you enjoy teaching as much as I do.